friends, welcome to Shift Church. We're so glad that you're here, whether you're in person or online. And if this is your first time, you can scan this QR code. And if you fill out the Connect card, we'll send you some free Opus coffee. Our next dinner group is going to be so much fun. July 23rd, we've rented out Westside Pool after hours from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And the cost is now free because of some very generous people. So you can scan the code to RSVP your spot, bring some food and drinks, or don't, whatever, just show up. It's gonna be awesome. Unfortunately, our Serve Day project fell through. But don't you worry your pretty little head, because we know, you know we got you. On July 30th, we're gonna have a special screening of the movie 1946. 1946 tells the story of the translation team that inserted the word homosexual into the Bible for the first time. It's an amazing film and well worth your time, and the kids will have their own fun little film too. And that's all the things for today, so let's kick off week 1 of stuff that I'm thinking about.
So the town that I grew up in, Wentzville, had the best 4th of July firework display ever, all right? The entire town would stop, all right? They would either go to what was called Progress Park to watch the fireworks, or they would line the street, Maya Road, with all of their chairs, everybody waiting for this massive display. And then it would begin, but like really slowly at first. Like at first there were like these small fireworks, and those small fireworks would build to like these medium ones. And then the medium ones would launch into these much larger ones. And then all of a sudden came a pause. And during that pause, everybody knew what was coming next, this grand finale. And you would hear these massive rockets being lit and, going off in the distance. You could hear them going up. And to my childhood eyes, it seemed like the entire nighttime sky was filled with just these massive explosions. And it was, those fireworks would end like just about the most perfect day. Like all day long, we had free swimming at the city pool that day. So all the kids would show up and go to the pool, and then, come home, and my dad would be grilling, and we'd have hamburgers and hot dogs and then ice cream, and then we would end the day with the fireworks. It was literally the perfect day every single year. I want to welcome you guys to Shift. My name is Joe. I'm the lead pastor here. If you're new, welcome. We are kicking off a new series that we've titled Stuff I'm Thinking About. And it's literally just that, stuff that I'm thinking about. And this week, I'm thinking about Merca. I'm thinking about freedom, right? In a few days, we're going to be celebrating our nation's independence, right? 4th of July. And I keep thinking about this idea of freedom. And as Americans, we all are just in love with this idea of freedom, right? Have you seen the freedom memes that are already out there? This one is my favorite. Why are there no knock-knock jokes about America? Because freedom rings. I just think that's funny. I just think that's hilarious. I know, right? Freedom is this universal longing, right? A fundamental yearning that lives within every heart. We cherish our freedom to express ourselves, to make our own choices, and to pursue our dreams. However, I look around our country and I see that not everyone is the same kind of free. Christianity and Christians are coddled and given privilege after privilege, while others can now legally be discriminated against. Freedom is only worth what it serves. If we use freedom to serve ourselves or our own interests, we cheapen it. In the letter written to the ancient church in a city called Galatia, the early church leader Paul talks about this idea of freedom and what it's to be used for. In the context of the letter, he's actually talking to a group of followers that were teaching that you needed to that you needed to be way too cute. If you're on the stream, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but the cutest baby's crawling, and I couldn't help it. So, yes, you are. No, don't apologize for that cuteness. Are you kidding me? What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So Paul is writing this letter to this group of people in this ancient city, right? And he's actually addressing another group that's within there that's saying that you have to follow these Old Testament laws to follow Jesus. Namely, they were saying that men still need to be circumcised if they wanted to follow Jesus. And Paul compares that to being enslaved. And he says this in chapter 5, verses 13 and 14. It's on the screen for you. For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters, but don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love, for the whole law can be summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. Now, I want to address something really fast. The Greek word that they have and normally gets translated into sinful nature is a really poor word choice, okay? In the Greek, it's the word sarx, and it does mean flesh. But instead of this idea of a sinful nature, what we should be doing is thinking of it as like our base desires, our animal appetites, all right? Do you use your freedom to satisfy your every whim, regardless of the consequences? If you do, then we're no better than animals, right? This doesn't mean that our bodies are wrong or inherently evil. They're not bad. So what it doesn't mean is the things that our bodies do, just those natural things that our bodies were made to do, are not wrong. They're not bad, all right? But it does mean that we have the ability to say enough, right? We have the ability to say enough. When we don't, that's when we invite chaos and negativity into our world and into the world around us. So the reality is that we often associate this idea of freedom with our external circumstances. We believe that freedom lies in our ability to do whatever we want, whenever we want. And we can chase after like material possessions, we can chase after wealth, we can chase after power, believing that it's those things that are going to grant us the liberty that we seek. Yet, as we try to satisfy those desires with these things, we often find that we end up being trapped in like this never-ending cycle of craving and then discontent. The illusion of this freedom, quote unquote, actually ends up blinding us from what our souls are actually longing for. When I was at the large evangelical church in my hometown of Wentzville that did this amazing firework display, I pursued this like crazy. We had a mega church culture in that church because that's what we wanted to be. So because we wanted to be that thing, we acted like that thing. And part of that meant celebrity pastors, right? Like if you're a mega church, you have to have a celebrity pastor because mega churches don't exist without a cult of personality, period. I don't care where it is. So I worked towards that. And so I would do the things that you had to do to be that celebrity pastor. So I spoke at a bunch of any event that I could. I would speak at it, right? The sermons that I wrote, they were dramatic and full of flair because they were performative. Like I was performing for an audience, and you could tell. I knew when I was going to get a laugh. I knew when I was going to get a cry. I knew when to cry. I knew all those things, all right? Just pulling the curtain back a little bit. I blogged when blogging was like the thing to do. I wrote for this online newspaper that was it was called The Patch. It's an AOL online newspaper. And so I had this weekly article that I would do. And a few of the articles, that one particularly went viral before being viral was a thing. And I've actually got a graphic for it. It was called, "If You Wouldn't Touch Your Grandma There, Don't Touch My Daughter There." And yes, it is as cringy and purity culture as it sounds. And I would not write this again. It's still out there in the, I found it right away. I was just like, oh, good Lord, it's still out there. I don't know how to get rid of it, but it's there. It's just there forever. So listen, this is not part of the stuff, but like give yourself grace for the things that you said and did years ago when you thought you knew what you were talking about. So, yes. But I did those things because that's what you were supposed to do. That's what you were supposed to do, and I was caught in that never-ending cycle. I could never be cool enough. I could never be famous enough. Not that I was ever anything close to famous, but I could never be good enough to satisfy that beast. It always demands more time. It always requires more energy, and it always steals more life. And it wasn't until I became a part of Shift that I was able to actually let all of that stuff go. And it really wasn't until just a few years ago that I was really able to honestly release all of that stuff. And in doing so, I honestly, not just because this is what we're talking about, but thinking back to it, I honestly really felt free for the first time in like 20 years of local ministry. Like I could breathe. I could just be me for the very first time. And so I've been able to just let go. And I honestly do not care about any of the platforms or the prestige or any of that celebrity pastor junk. And what I've discovered is that real freedom and liberation happens only when we use our freedom for everyone around us. How can I experience liberation when my neighbor is not free? Now, what I don't want you to hear is Christianese, okay? Because the church loves to over-spiritualize things. Like we're really good at it. And we'll over-spiritualize this idea of freedom or liberation, and we'll turn it into something that's just simple personal piety, right? It's an inward transformation that has no bearing on the world around us. Like this. Freedom means that I need to get my neighbor to say the right words at the right time in the right combination, and then they're free. Like, I don't know about you, but that sounds like some Harry Potter nonsense. Like, instead of, it's like Wingardium Leviosa, not Leviosar, right? And now you're free, right? So look at that passage again. What does it say that we're to use our freedom for, right? Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love, for the whole of the law can be summed up in this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. So we're to serve one another in love and to love our neighbor as ourselves. To love my neighbor is to want for them the same thing I want for me. So practically speaking, that's going to look different for different people. My neighbor may not want the same things that I want in life, but the principle is the same, right? Because I want to flourish in life, so I need to want for them to flourish in life in the way that they want to flourish. So just a side note, notice in there, there's no caveats. There's no limit to what neighbor is. It's not your white neighbor. It's not your straight neighbor. It's not your Christian neighbor. It's just neighbor. And no matter what a Supreme Court says, this freedom belongs to all of our neighbors, not just the white Christian nationalist ones. Now, this freedom comes with responsibility, right? This isn't something that we receive and then just get to abuse. We need to recognize that we have this responsibility to this freedom that we've been giving. Now, what I'm not saying is that you can never do anything for yourself. Like you've got to constantly be serving the other. So I'm not saying that you can never do anything for yourself. You can never enjoy life or never have fun. I think that's a ridiculous notion. One that the church loves to entertain, but I will not. We will not. If you want to argue for a poverty theology, you can have fun with that. That conversation is boring to me. So what we must do is that we must use this freedom to benefit all around us. But I need you to hear me when I say this. When we do that, there will be ramifications. There is a pastor in Nashville, Tennessee. He's the founding pastor of Grace Point Church. His name is Stan Mitchell. And he's no longer the lead pastor at this church. He has like a behind the scenes role. And basically what he does now, like all of his work is focusing on working with LGBTQ plus families. For instance, if a child comes out to their parents and the parents don't really know what to do next, they will contact Stan, and Stan kind of walks them through all of that type of stuff. So that's mainly his role now. But he has a fantastic quote, and I have it up here on the screen for you. It says this: "If you claim to be someone's ally but aren't getting hit by the same stones thrown at them, you aren't standing close enough. When we use our freedoms to help others, especially those that the church often refuses to help, you're going to get hit." People will not understand when that happens. Family will not understand, all right? When you stand that close to your allies, the people that you're allying with, and you get those stones tossed at you, you will lose friends and relationships. But sometimes that is the precious cost of freedom and loving your neighbor. So hear me when I say this next thing, though. That is not, please hear me, write it down, tattoo it, I don't care what you got to do to remember this. That is not persecution. It is inconvenience, and those things are not the same. What you can't do is participate in the game, in that game, that us versus them game. That path only leads to more selfishness and ruin. Ours is a freedom that compels us to love and serve others, to seek justice, and to promote equality. Our freedom finds its highest expression when we use it to uplift, encourage, and bring hope to those around us. And I so wish that all of you got to hear and read the messages and texts and responses and emails that we received from all over the place. It's crazy to me to think about the fact that we are just this little faith community in Gainesville, and yet the reach is so much larger than that. The other day, I was talking to somebody from San Diego who has a small group that heard about our stuff and watches it and then talks about it. We have a group, there's a small group of people in Canada that's part of the virtual campus. There's a group in Missouri, there's a group in Oklahoma, to just name a few. And do you know why? I truly believe this. I think it's because we took this idea of freedom, of physical and spiritual freedom, of liberation, that until we're all free, no one is, right? And we took that seriously. Like everybody that walks in this place, well, not everybody. Everybody that's looking to walk into this place, right, is here because of that thing. Like we just knew how soul-sucking the church had become. Like we felt how crushing church culture is right now. And we knew that if we felt that way, that there had to be so many others that felt the exact same way. We got tired. I can't tell you how tired. Tired's not even the right word. We became exhausted of doing it how everyone else was telling us how to do it. It stopped working for us, like as a family. It stopped working for us years ago, and it felt like it was killing us. There's a poem that I first heard recited by Nelson Mandela, and it's a poem that he would recite repeatedly during his decades-long imprisonment, and it's the poem Invictus by William Ernest Henley. That came out of nowhere. Out of the night that covers me. Oh, stop. I know you're making fun of me. I can't help it. I'm an emotional guy. Leave me alone. It is a show. You're welcome. And scene, right? Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I think whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but am bowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Every time I hear that. We will not play their game. And by not participating, we find ourselves free. By not sinking to that level, we give them the opportunity to have the same freedom. We have to understand the power of freedom and liberation. Freedom is not doing whatever we want, whenever we want, or using our privilege and position to put others into their proper place. True freedom and liberation happen when we are free and do not succumb to the whims of our animal appetites, to our basest desires. Freedom does not participate in the us versus them narrative. And we do not allow our detractors to determine our fate or take captive our souls. Only we have the agency to make those determinations. Now, as we move into a time of reflection, if you're new with us, we don't have like a come to Jesus altar call or an emotional time of response. What we do is we have a time of reflection. And so if you would hit those lights, in a moment the band will come back up, but only so that it's not an awkward silence. So what I want everybody to do today is to take a deep breath and to focus any of those strong emotions that have welled up and what we're talking about today. Like feel those things, but focus them. I'm going to ask you some questions, right? And then the band's going to come back up. And for anybody that is wanting to participate, you can in the symbols of communion. These small little symbols of freedom that we teach that Jesus brought to us and that now we can live and bring to our places. So the first question I have for you is this. What are you feeling right now? What emotions have come to the surface and why? Where in your life have you allowed your base desires, your animal appetites, to dictate this freedom? What would it look like in your life? What would it look like if you start or maybe continue to use your freedom to serve others in love? And the last question I have, and you guys can go ahead and come back up. The last question I have is this. Where have you surrendered your freedom to captors? And how can you take back that agency? So I'm going to pray as you think through those things. And then as the band plays, when you're ready, you can, for those wanting to participate, you can take of those small symbols, and then we'll have a song to dismiss us. So let's pray. Let me pray for you. Oh, captain of our souls and master of our fates, thank you for true freedom. Not freedom to do whatever we want regardless of any outcomes, but freedom that brings liberation to us and to our neighbor. I ask that you show us how to live that out. Help us to recognize the opportunities that are around us every single day. And when everything in us tells us to go low, especially when it would be really fun to do so, I pray for the strength to resist those base urges and instead master those impulses for the greater good. Help us to be better than that. Thank you for Jesus and for him showing us that narrow path. May we treat others how he did. And thank you for the freedom he brings and the life we can now live because of him. We thank you for your love and your guidance. Amen.